Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of hashtag Blind Talk. I'm here with my trusty co host. Hello.
Hey, hey guys.
And our special guest,
Mhm.
Janelle. Hello, Janelle.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
It's going great. We just did a technical overview for TJ. So if she doesn't
Gosh.
look great, blame her.
Yeah, exactly.
She's in charge of it. So, TJ, let's ask Janelle the hard questions. We told Janelle we were going to grill her through this episode, so now's the time to put it put
Exactly.
it to her.
Yes, yes. Hi, Janelle. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm nervous now.
Thanks.
Don't grill me too hard.
No,
But
no, no,
all that
no.
horrible reviews you gave us, over the last.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what you get for speaking up and speaking out about us every
Oh, I
week.
know. Now I'm going to get grilled. All right.
So I really want to start with your diagnosis. Can you kind of tell us about that, like what age you were and how that process went for you?
Yeah. So, from my understanding, I'm a little bit older when I was diagnosed than most people are when they are diagnosed with Stargardt's. So, I was 20 when I was diagnosed. And growing up, I only needed, I think in sixth grade, contacts and glasses to see the board. Otherwise, it was corrected to 20/20 until I was diagnosed when I was 20 with Stargardt's. So um, I went to a normal eye doctor, and it was over winter break when I was in undergraduate school. I always went, you have a long winter break, so I always did
Yeah.
my appointments then. And they noticed, I think it was about 6 yellow spots on my pink retinas, which is not normal to have yellow spots there. So that was like a red flag. And then they sent me to a more local specialist who then sent me to my retinal specialist that I still go to now. And they did the whole day of testing that I've heard so many people talk about, you
Really?
know, all sorts of fun, not fun, fun stuff that they did. And by the end of the day, they diagnosed me with Stargardt's. They used actually a weird name like fundus phlegmonius, whatever this weird name is, but it's called
Mm-hmm.
Stargardt's. And they did not tell me anything about what it was. The only thing they told me was in the future, when you need assistance, keep good track of your paperwork and your medical records because you're going to need them in the future. And my mom and I are looking at each other like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Um,
Right.
but she
and
didn't ask, right? Didn't ask any questions.
I mean, we didn't know what to ask. We're just
Right.
kind of, and unfortunately, at the specialist I go to, they are very busy. Like the waiting rooms are packed
Yeah.
every time. And you just get the sense of like they are in a hurry. Like they're
Right.
there to do their job and they got to, move and groove and get to the. So, when you're feeling like you get told this information and then you can feel like they don't have the time to chat with you, like they
Yeah.
have to move on. So
Yeah.
then we were just like, went home and had to Google everything. And
Mm.
that's where I learned I'd be legally blind and all these questions of what does that mean? Like, I don't know what legally blind means. Is that completely blind? Like, you just, when you don't know, you don't know. So
Right.
I'm like
Exactly.
freaking out. Like, and when is it going to happen? Because I
Right.
had read that it happens usually when you're young, but I was already 20. So I'm like, is this going to happen like really, really soon? And how much time do I have left with my vision? And so, yeah, it was pretty scary.
And it's equally, I find it so scary too if when you're given that information, like you said, you don't know what to ask because you're kind of blindsided by it, right? So you don't come
Yeah,
prepared for that to have a list of questions. Like now we know going for these appointments, if you have anything, jot them down and then ask them while you're
right,
there.
right.
And going to Google, I'm sure is, if you're like me, it can scare you. You can put in that you're having a headache, and you can either have anything from a sinus infection to a brain bleed in which you're going to not wake up from,
Right.
right? So, I mean, it's
Yep.
kind of scary what's out there when you're having to Google that information.
Right.
So did you prepare a little bit better going forward, going back for another appointment to know better what to ask?
Yeah, well, it only took me 2 years from when I was diagnosed to when I was declared legally blind, and actually, it happened within a 4 month like period of time. So it happened really quick
Gosh.
for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna probably cry a couple times.
Oh, you're okay.
I'm so sensitive. I went to Arizona because a lot of my family thought, there's this doctor out there that we've come across, and I'm from upstate New York. And he claims he can help you with your Stargardts. And so I went out there, and really I was on the phone with him first, of course, and he primarily was trying to treat age-related macular degeneration with microcurrent machines and vitamin A treatments. And you might know where I'm going when I say vitamin A. We now know that that's no bueno. We don't do vitamin A. However, at the time, there was no other treatments, nothing in sight. This was 18, 19 years ago. It was not, vitamin A was not known that it was like a bad thing. And so he's like, it's not going to hurt you to come out here. Like it's worth a try. I think it's going to help. And so we were just, clinging on to any hope. Well, I went out there, and 5 days, a lot of money. Insurance obviously didn't cover it. And the vitamin A was vitamin A every day by mouth, a tablet, vitamin A spray on the tongue, and a vitamin A dissolvable tablet under the tongue. And within 4 months, because that's too much vitamin A, and my eyes, that's like the kryptonite to our eyes. You can't process, especially synthetic vitamin A.
Right.
So I went from 2040 acuity to 2200 in 4 months.
Jeez.
It was rough.
Hopefully he's not practicing anymore.
Oh, I don't know, but it's just a bummer. I remember having, and I'm not here to, sue anyone or whatever, but when I had my 6-month consult over the phone with him, I was in college. I just snuck into an empty lecture hall and did my 6-month consult with him. I said, I'm actually legally blind now. And he's like, what? And I told him that my doctor said, be careful about vitamin A. There's new studies showing that too much vitamin A can really be bad, not necessarily for Stargardts, but for similar eye diseases like Stargardts. So just be careful. And I'm like, well, too late now. So I told the doctor this, and I heard him flipping through papers. And anyway, he said, stop taking everything right away, but it was too late. So who knows how long I would have had more vision for,
Right.
You talked a little bit about the diagnosis, obviously, and going away. Like I have to think it was pretty horrific for the 4 months that you were dealing with this, to just think, when is your vision going to leave? And I've talked to other people with RP as an example about their field of vision narrowing and just not knowing. And I've known a family of 3 with RP who are at different levels. 2 sisters and a brother. And it must be horrible, an extra layer of horrible, to know that the vision's going to go away, but not know when it's going to happen. Can you tell us a little bit about those 4 months?
Yeah, well, so it was about 2 years of knowing, but the 4 months was from 2040 to 2200. So I lost my acuity really quickly. Yeah. But from when I was diagnosed to when I was actually declared legally blind was about 2 years. So I started going to therapy once every 2 weeks while I was on campus. And that was helpful, just like talking out my fears. And I'm like, I won't be able to drive someday. And, just holding on for dear life to my license and appreciating driving and trying to just, sorry, I'm so sensitive. I remember laying in center field. I played softball in college, and I would just, stare at the clouds and just be like, when am I going to not see these someday? And it was just, really hard.
It is really hard. I think like we all have dealt with it at some point or another, but it's difficult when you don't know, right? The not knowing, I think, is harder than just when it's going to happen. So your diagnosis had like 2 components to it, and most people do, obviously, with Stargardts and RP as an example. Right. So, tell us a little bit about your younger years. You reading your videos and listening to them, apparently you don't know anybody else with blindness or low vision. And so
Right.
tell us what you're a softball player. So, fairly like active lifestyle in college and leading up to college. Tell us about like your younger years.
Yeah, I mean, everything like vision wise was normal. I played field hockey. I made the varsity softball team in 8th grade. I played year round. I played travel softball. So I did a lot of sports. We all hated basketball, all of us athletes. I'm from a very small school, like TJ.
Right.
So we all kind of boycotted basketball and did competitive cheerleading.
Allison is not going to love to hear that. I'm just telling you.
I know. Poor Allison, I'm sorry. I could never remember the plays. This was my problem. They would call the play, and I was like, oh, shoot, I have no idea what to do. So,
softball, you just got to throw a ball at somebody, right?
Yeah.
I'm impressed that you played field hockey, though. Field hockey is massive in Australia. And I've never heard it once here in the United States because of ice hockey, I guess, is the big thing. But it's huge in Australia.
Yep. Yeah, I love field hockey. They got rid of it my senior year. I was so sad. And they turned it to like girls soccer. And I was not good with my feet. So I said, well, I guess I just don't play, anything my senior year for that season. But yeah, just lots of sports. And I did notice a few things. Looking back, I didn't really notice it then because I didn't know I had an eye issue. But I noticed that when I would catch, I was catching the ball once, and I made a video. You might remember this story, but for varsity and JV tryouts, the coach asked me to demonstrate how to look a ball in and, rock your hands back and throw it. And TJ, I know your daughter played softball. So you're familiar with all this fun stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it tipped off my glove and like smacked me in the nose. And I was mortified and embarrassed, and it was very painful. And that had never happened before. But everyone's just like, what is going on? Like, that's so weird. And in college, I started not being able to hit the ball in the batting cages. We would have like a separate batting practice.
Yeah.
And I all of a sudden was missing, by like an inch, but missing everything. And I was close and my mechanics were still good, but I couldn't hit the ball. So she just slowly, like, once I was diagnosed, but I wasn't legally blind yet, I didn't know how long it was going to take to lose my vision. So it was just weird. Like, all of a sudden she's like, you know what? And in a nice way, but she's like, you don't need to keep coming to practice because I'm not sure, what's going on. Maybe she suspected, but she didn't want to say it to me. Yeah. I don't think I accepted it, but I was like, whoa, this is really sad. And I just felt so bad. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening.
Well, it's not your fault. That's the first thing.
Yeah. And sometimes we'd be in the field house and, we would be doing like, again, throwing drills where we'd be like rocking our hands back and throwing really fast. And the ball, I would lose it because you lose your central vision. But again, it's also new to me. I didn't have someone to consult with and ask them, what's the first thing that's going to go? And how am I going to notice it functionally when this happens? Like, I didn't know. And so I would lose track of the ball, and you track it in with your central vision. That's how you track a ball into your glove. Mm-hmm. Well, the ball was just completely disappearing. So I would duck and cover and scream, and the ball would fly somewhere. And then my whole team's like, what's going on? And it's so embarrassing. And I'm just, crying, like, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. So that's kind of like some clues, and kind of slowly how it happened.
Yeah, definitely you want your vision if you're going to be pitching because that ball comes back at you pretty fast and can hurt you pretty badly. So definitely safety aspects. I think your coach was more probably concerned about you than anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
And the last game I remember pitching in college, the ball actually swiped the tip of my ear. Oh. And I knew at that point that I was having really bad trouble, seeing the ball. And so I was petrified, but I still was trying to just, help my team because I was like one of their main pitchers at that point. And softball was my life. So I tried, but I was petrified that a girl was going to get a hold of it and I wouldn't be able to defend myself. So nowadays they actually wear, I don't know if you know this, but in softball, they wear the masks now.
That's what I was going to say. So when my daughter was coming up, it started to be a thing, like honestly, she started with wearing the mask from the very beginning. When she first started learning, she was wearing the mask. So she didn't know any different. Then they started eventually implementing it in the different fashions as far as school ball and the travel ball and, that sort of thing. So then it became all infielders, had to wear a mask or whatever. And that to me was, it was non-negotiable. If you step foot on that field, because although we found out when Peyton was like 14, I guess, we didn't know what it looked like for her until we did future genetic testing. So I was like, no, this is non-negotiable from here on out. We are not. Oh, I don't want to wear it today. It's going to save your face and the thousands of dollars in braces that we've paid for. So yeah.
And I remember someone asking me like, well, Janelle, do you think maybe you would just put like a helmet on and still be able to pitch? And for me, it wasn't even just that would be obnoxious. Back in the day, that thing didn't exist. Wearing like a batting helmet with a mask on it, I was like, no, how's my arm going to get past the helmet? No, like that would look ridiculous, and absolutely not.
Right.
But the other part of it is like, even if I had some sort of safety armor on me, you have to be able to like receive the ball from the outfield to be the cutoff to home plate, and you have to be able to like catch a ball that comes to you. You'll have to be able to make outs. Otherwise you're just hurting your team. So for lots of reasons, it just wasn't possible. So, but what's hard is that I had to be the one to make the call because
that's the hard part, right?
It was so hard because there's no rule book with that. So I had to go say, it's not safe to do it. And sorry, guys.
That's okay.
It was really hard to do that because, like I said, it was my life. And they were like my family away from home, like my sorority.
Yeah. You definitely get close with your team when you're in the daily grind for sure.
Yeah. But what was so nice is because I still had 2 years left, that my coach, I was a sports studies minor, and I was able to, my junior year, I think it was an independent study, and my senior year was an internship. So it like, as part of my class or whatever, I got credit for it. I was like the student assistant pitching coach. So I actually ran all the practices with the pitchers by myself. And I analyzed them on this program called Dartfish. I would actually overlap their footage, their camera footage, and break down their mechanics for them, and stuff like that. So I still got to travel with them and work with the pitchers and be a part of the team.
Well, that was cool.
Yeah, that's really great. It's important to still be part of something, I think, even if you're not doing it the same way, if you love it.
Exactly.
I want to go back a little bit because you talked about therapy, and I think this is a really important topic, and we haven't really spoken much about it on the podcast in the first couple of episodes. So I'm a big believer in therapy can really help, but I'm interested to know if you feel comfortable to talk to us about it, how that worked for you in your early years.
Yeah, in the early years, it was nice. Her name was Susan, and I would just kind of talk about all my fears. At first, before I was legally blind, I talked about all my fears, and there was a lot of them. And then, because it was slow but yet quick, the progression and the fears, and then, like I said, it was 4 months. And then all of a sudden, I came back from that winter break not being able to drive anymore. And I had talked about my fear of not driving for so long. I'm like, oh, this is going to really not be good. And I actually I didn't know how quick it was going to happen. I actually lived off campus my senior year, and they never this was the first year ever that they let people do that. And I lived off campus with my now husband, and I had to find a way that second semester of my senior year when I couldn't drive to get back 5 miles onto campus in the middle of nowhere. There was no taxi. It was rough, but luckily I had a neighbor in my building that worked on campus, and my landlord helped hook me up with that ride. So she was a sweetheart, and that worked out. Thank goodness. Okay. Otherwise I don't know what I would have done.
Right.
But so going back to therapy, once I all of a sudden couldn't drive anymore. I remember coming back that second semester of my senior year and seeing her for the first time, my therapist, and she's like, "So how's it going?" I'm like, "Well, I'm now legally blind and can't drive." And it was just so weird because all of a sudden, before break, I was not legally blind. I was, but I didn't know it yet.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I couldn't drive and I live off campus and I'm like, well, but guess what? I called my landlord and I got a ride every day in the campus. I can't leave camp. I don't have a dorm room to like hang out with as a home base, but I use my disability room on campus. I had accessibility services and like we had our own little like area with private cubicles with a computer. And I would sometimes go in there and study and just like lay my head down if I needed a nap or something because I didn't have a room on campus. And so my now husband would pick me up at the end of his day. He was getting his master's like 15 minutes down the road at a different college. So anyway, he'd pick me up and bring me home. But going to therapy, she was like, "Oh, how are you doing with this? Talk to me."
Right.
And I'm like, I'm figuring things out, surprisingly. And it's funny, like, again, no one teaches you this stuff. But, you know, when failure is not an option, failure was not an option. Like, I had to just keep pushing and figure things out. So,
right. And I'm sure just having someone else to talk to that, you know, therapy for me has come by way of talking about it out loud with others. And, you know, I found that hard to do initially. I was very much someone who faked it and I didn't want to discuss it. I felt like if I talked about it, it made it more real until I started surrounding myself with all of you guys and opening up about it. I have found that has been truly the most therapeutic thing I've done for myself. You all know what it's like to go through it. And, you know, sometimes just having someone to listen, even if now I know that even if they don't know what you're going through, just having that person to listen is just so beneficial. So therapy, I think, is way underrated for in many situations.
Well, and a lot of times
point, though, about community. Sorry, I was just saying it's a good point about community that it doesn't have to be, you know, a professional therapist either. It can be that person that you feel comfortable talking to, but talking to somebody is really important because, you know, you can just withdraw very quickly, and we've seen it, you know, happen where people withdraw really quickly, and it's a downhill slope very quickly.
Exactly. So moving into your adult years post-college, what did that look like for you as you progressed into actual adulthood?
Yeah. So, well, right from undergrad, I graduated summa cum laude, whoop, whoop, with my psychology degree. And then I went right into massage school right after that and got licensed and certified in massage therapy. And to be honest, the reason I was like allowed myself to do that program, I've always wanted to do that. But I decided last minute to be an occupational therapist the second semester of my senior year after I was legally blind. I thought, OT is a good thing to get into. You help people function despite whatever difficulties they're having. Let's be an OT. That sounds like a good idea. So, but because I didn't know till last minute, there was still classes I had to do, like anatomy and physiology and physics and stuff. So that's the OT program they were willing to accept the anatomy and physiology credits from the massage program. So that's kind of actually, otherwise I would have been part-time anyway at the OT program for a while. So it was the same amount of time and I would have had another degree with the massage, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I was like, cool, I actually get to do massage. I probably never would have done it. And I'm going to do that, get my A&P, credits and then go do occupational therapy. So yeah, just a lot of school, just bebopped from that program to then got my master's in occupational therapy. That was a 2.5-year program. Loved the occupational therapy school. The program was amazing. There's a lot of difficulties just logistically when you start doing fieldwork placements and you're like, oh, I got to do a home care rotation. Luckily, one of my professors was the one doing the home care rotation with me, and he lived close by, so he didn't mind, picking me up and dropping me off. for the home care. Otherwise, how are you supposed to do home care if I can't drive? There's just so many logistical things. And they would give me preference as like an accommodation. So I would get to pick first what was the easiest for me and how am I going to get there before they kind of placed everybody else. But yeah, then I ended up getting hired as an OT at my last field work at a rehab hospital. And I worked in a traumatic brain injury unit for 3 years there. And it was phenomenal. I loved it so much. And yeah, then eventually got pregnant, and I'm married now with my husband for 14 years. We've been together for 24 years. We started dating when I was a baby. I was like in middle school. We've been together for a long time. So yeah.
So he knew about that from the beginning, and just kind of, y'all just kind of navigated it together. It wasn't anything you had to introduce to someone, right?
Right. So he was like 2 grades above me in school. And then he ended up going to the college that I applied to, and then I got into. And so we actually went to college together, and he got his master's next, 15 minutes down the road from me. So he's always been with me. And when I was diagnosed, I remember his reaction. I remember, crying, and I'm like, I can't drive anymore. And I'm thinking like, he's not going to want to be with me. Like, I just remember like, oh, like, it was like this weird feeling of can I do? Because you don't know, like everything's so new and you just think the world is falling in. And I'm like, oh, you're not going to want to be with me. And he's like, it's fine. He's like, I'll chauffeur you. You got to chauffeur all the time. He's trying to find the positives. But I remember him saying chauffeur, the word, you got to chauffeur. I'm like, I don't want a chauffeur. I don't want a chauffeur. I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. I don't want a chauffeur. But yeah, so he's always been supportive, and he still is. He's the one that drives the kids. He's the head coach for all the sports. If he's not the head coach, he's the assistant coach. We run 5 businesses, and he's a busy guy. And he still takes the time to bring me to my appointments, or his mom, my mother-in-law. And my mom helps get the kids to all their sporting games, baseball, and
you ended up having to give up. I think there's a video that you made recently. So you gave up on your healthcare career. You had to give that up due to it not being safe any longer to continue. Is that right?
Well, I left being an OT because I was pregnant at the time. And so that was like an hour away from where I live now. That was more in a city, which was phenomenal. We bought our first home. It was an 8-minute walk from my door to my desk on purpose so that I could be independent. My husband was in medical sales, so he was gone all week long. And I was just in a city, like all by myself with no family around me. So we just bought a house really close so I could just rain or shine or snow. I could just dress appropriately and get myself to work every single day. Yeah. And that was, I miss being able to, hit a store on the way home and, walking by foot. That was so nice.
Right.
Don't have that anymore. But that's part of it too, is like moving back home. I ended up being a stay-at-home mom. I have 2 boys. They're 2 years apart. They're now 10 and 8. But yeah, I decided to be a stay-at-home mama instead. So that was really the main reason, is that I was, stay-at-home mom. But a lot of the places in this area for work it wasn't like the easiest to get to them also, if that makes sense. And yeah, it was a lot accommodating everything. To be an OT, there was a lot that goes into making that setting work for me. And honestly, I didn't, between, wanting to stay at home with my kids anyway, but thinking of having to go through all that again, it was exhausting. We don't like change. We like to memorize things, and we like to find ways to do things and then just keep doing it.
Right. Exactly.
It's hard change is really hard. So.
And tell us a little bit about your businesses. I'm interested about that. I've just obviously had torn labor and hip surgery, and so been on crutches and had adaptions that Tammy's brought into the home. And so it's been, stores like yours are really vital for every as well. So I'd love to know a little bit about, what you do.
Yeah. So, my husband used to be in medical sales, and he actually used to sell durable medical equipment. So he used to sell, the commodes and the shower chairs and walker, anything you can imagine that's like a durable medical equipment that people
Mm-hmm.
use. And we sell bigger things like lift chairs and hospital beds and scooters,
Yeah.
stuff like that as well. So it's kind of anything like splints, things for your arms, things for your legs, all anything you can imagine, we sell. And then also we have another a second location that we opened up that we also have medical scrubs that we sell, medical scrubs, that the nurses and doctors wear.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we have that. But it's neat because I used to order these things for my patients. I would order them like, oh, okay, well, you're going to need, when you are discharged, you're going to need this tub transfer bench. And I would teach them how to use it. And I would actually do home visits with them before they would go home. Not everybody, but a lot of them. And I would, show them how, like, set it all up for them, like in practice, like this is how you're going to sit and you're going to slide into the shower, etc.
Yeah.
And now we sell all that fun stuff. So it's kind of neat to still be, seeing similar things. And
it's kind of gone full circle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Tell us a little bit more about hobbies that you have now, interests that you have. I think, for a lot of people who have lost their vision, they kind of struggle with things that they used to do and miss those things. But tell me about, things that you're interested in now and that you do now.
Well, a lot of my hobbies are my children, I would say.
Right.
We're so busy with baseball is our main thing. But even just last night, we got home from a baseball game and my youngest was in the front yard and he was playing wiffle ball. That's all they do. Blitz ball, wiffle ball, hitting the ball over our, I'm looking at it right now, hitting it over the road and into the neighbor's yard. That's a home run. So, he was playing and Mom, can you pitch to me? Can you throw to me? And I was like, you know what? Give me that bat. Why don't you pitch to me? And I just wanted to see, can I do it? Yeah. And I've lost a lot of vision recently in my left eye. So I'm right-handed. So the ball's coming and my left eye is the first eye there. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I've tried to hit the ball since I've lost more vision in my left eye. And I didn't crush the ball, but I did get a hold of it twice. So
still got it.
I still got it somehow. I don't know.
A little boost to the ego, right?
A little bit. And so, I still shoot, hoops with the kids in the driveway. I take care of the house a lot. I don't know if you can call that a hobby, but I'm constantly weeding. And I made a video recently. I torched the weeds too with
I was like, wow, that's full on.
Yeah, it's I love that little thing. It's so nice, but it can be a little scary. So I always have the hose right next to me, and I hose everything down before I move on. We don't want to be the blind girl that lights the house on fire. That would be very bad.
Probably not so great.
That would not be so good. But yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily hobbies per se. It's just a lot of taking care of the kids and doing their sports. With lots of sports. We travel nonstop all summer long. We do sports. So busy. We're busy bees.
Yeah, that's important to get the kids moving. I used to play t-ball at an early age, and then moved into basketball and rugby before I started playing blind low vision sports, cricket and goalball. And so I was just everybody. We lived in a block. And it was pretty quiet, but there was probably 10 kids that lived on the block, and we would just get out basically after school and on the weekends and just play. And I said to my wife, it's sad that kids can't do that anymore, And then Memorial Day weekend, we live in kind of a smaller block again now, and in the back of an estate, and everybody was out. Kids were riding their bikes and playing basketball. And I'm like, this is awesome to see.
Yeah, it is. It's like that in my neighborhood too. And in the summertime, especially, there's a lot of people who move there in the summer. They have lake houses over there. And so it's just a ton of kids playing and having fun and that sort of thing. So it's awesome to see that kind of thing still exist, because I grew up like that too, Murray, just playing with the kids in the neighborhood, and we'd be riding bikes and all the things. We would use water hoses as jump ropes, and just all the fun kid things. So, but and you will find, I think, eventually, once your kids are grown and flown, you will find hobbies for yourself that you didn't know you really liked. You know what I'm saying? And so
Like
I'm
podcast.
like podcasts, exactly. This is a
Yes.
newfound hobby of mine. But I think it's important just to continue on finding yourself, not only just as a mom who we dedicate our years, to our children, but then you find
Right.
yourself and you're like, gosh, I kind of enjoy this too. And to not let vision loss stop you from doing any of that. Because I
Right.
still like to do, it goes back to everything that we said on, I think, every episode. Vision loss just changes how we do things. It doesn't change who we are. We are
Right.
always adapting. And I think that's very important for people to keep in perspective. It doesn't have to change anything. It just,
Right.
you navigate it differently.
Exactly. Like I would love to take a cooking class sometime, but I feel like we're just so busy all the time. But when the kids are grown, perhaps I will we have a community college literally 5 minutes down the road. And I know that stuff exists. So, stuff like that. You go and learn something new. And I loved being a student. I loved being a student. I tell my boys, I said, when I was in elementary school, I used to love keeping my desk so neat and taking my pencil out and sharpening it. Just everything about school I loved. And even when I was legally blind, I loved school, even though it was a pair of legs walking around like the professor. I couldn't see the professor, and I'd have my fidget toys and I would be doodling and stuff because I couldn't see anything. But I still loved it. I loved learning. So I do miss learning. Yeah, it's nice to learn new things.
I think
Yes,
being curious is a real advantage with low vision, and I talk to students all the time that come into workshops and summer camps and things, and I say, I was always very curious, and I was born legally blind, so had bad vision from the get-go. But I would always ask questions. I'd like to listen to like conversations and radio and things like that, and just learn. Like you were saying. And it's really helped me a lot later in life, just be able to communicate and understand people well. So I don't get too shy very often, and, happy to just put myself out there. But I think that's an advantage, and I was watching a video that young Jordan was doing, talking about it's so hard to get a job. And I believe that is true. He was saying basically it's like a criminal record without the criminal record.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's hard with blindness. And I think, things like at a very young age, if you can, to be curious and to gain confidence just in yourself. And we talk about it all the time, but it's so important because when you go into an interview, I see a lot of students just put everything about their blindness on their resume. And I'm like, well, tell me about you. And what are you interested in? What hobbies do you have? What is your career goal? And I think a lot of people with blindness really struggle with that. And especially now that we're seeing a lot of people in the community lose their vision later in life, I feel like, it's a complete change. There's one creator that, talks a lot about it's so horrible and terrible being blind. You can't do anything. And I just think, man, I can't relate to that because I've not had experience, but I've also, adjusted to the blindness and say, okay, well, I need to be confident. I need to, present in an interview like I can do the job, and then I'll figure out what assistive technology I'll need to be able to go do it. But me as a person, I don't want people to think that, you can't do something just because you've got low vision. Like that annoys me a lot.
Exactly. And I think the fear of once you tell people, we also fear how they perceive it, and they want to automatically think that you can't do something. So I think it's very important to just show up and show out and show them what you can do. I mean, it's I think a lot of it is mindset and how you approach it.
It's like you said yesterday, go take some wiffle balls. Like,
yeah.
Got to put yourself out there, right? And you've got
Yeah.
experiences, and you've got to fail before you succeed. And that's not
exactly
with blindness and low vision. That's everybody.
everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And I know I had someone, her name was Sarah. She was my supervisor, my clinical instructor when I was an OT student at the rehab hospital where I ended up working. And she just went above and beyond, adapting retyping all the assessments that I would have to do to make them large, because they don't make large font assessments, which is hopefully they've changed their ways. But They never did back in the day. So you'd have to literally either make it bigger on the copier or scanner thing, and it would look like a newspaper. It was humongous, and that's not very functional. Or you'd have to retype it and print it off with lots of pages, but at least it was more functional, you know.
Yeah.
But she redid all of that stuff for me. And I just think to myself, I hope that everyone that's legally blind finds themselves a Sarah who's like in their corner, that literally she would do anything to adapt it for me. You know, she would she'd stay late, she would go home and do it. Like she would just do anything she could to adapt things for me. And I felt so lucky to have her. So I just hope that for other people, you know. And
exactly.
And once you accommodate, like you can do the job. Like they just need to take the time to accommodate all the things so that you can see what you can see, or however you need to, you know, do it depending on how much vision you have. Once you are accommodated, you can do the job.
I think it's interesting.
I don't know why it's so difficult to understand.
Well, I was just saying, like Neil, the Star Guardian of the North from Canada, who originated Star Guardians, I think. But he was saying yesterday that he was at a train station and, you know, he just decided he was going to ask somebody rather than, you know, take a photo of the board and try and enlarge it and do all the things that we do. And, you know, he said it was easy. You know, it was a lot easier just to ask someone. And I think, like, we're very proud, you know, we want to be independent. We want to be proud. But I think it's not weakness to be able to get help. Everybody needs someone, right? And we think in just normal circumstances, marriages, you know, relationships, family, friends, it's so hard for us to just reach out and say, hey, can you help me with this? Because we want to do it ourselves and it's a thing for us. But everybody needs that somebody, you know, to be able to help. And that's, again, not just blindness and low vision. That's everyday life for everybody. So
Exactly.
We have to remember that, you know, at the end of the day, we're humans. And it's hard to do everything yourself. And nobody, even with full vision, does that.
Right. Exactly. I know I can tell you, I've got friends that I know I can count on that I don't have any problem asking them, can they do something for me? You know, and that's such a great feeling to have. And I know they don't mind it. Now, if it was, I do struggle still with asking others, but I've gotten more comfortable the more that I've traveled. I've had to ask because I'm making these trips by myself. And so I've had to kind of learn, I guess, to ask when I need assistance, you know, when it's virtually impossible. But me, I just, you know, my brain still says, you don't need anyone or anything. You got this.
That's good to have, right? You know, like I think you've had to deal with that a lot yourself, and just the, you know, going through the different parts of your life and how it's morphed, you know, and then the kids, obviously. Mother.
I have to ask for help quite a bit. So I've heard a lot of people talk about this topic as far as being open to like telling people that they're legally blind. And it's so interesting to me, just, you know, everyone's just so different. But the way that I was, again, maybe the age I was and like the time of my life, but I was in college and I was 20 and then 22 and I was declared legally blind. I told everyone, like, that was kind of like, hi, I'm Janelle. And by the way, I'm legally blind and I cannot see your face. So just so you know, when you pass me on campus, I will not see you. So if you say hi to me, just say my name so I know you're talking to me and tell me who you are. And then that way I can like say hi to you appropriately and know who I'm talking to. Literally told them right off the bat. Like, I was not embarrassed. For me, that was just, I didn't want to be socially awkward. I wanted to be as normal as possible, you know? And for me, that was the only way to carry on and have a normal social life, is to just be open with everyone.
Tell people. Yeah.
I told everyone, and I still tell everyone. Like I meet them, and if it's not at the beginning of the conversation, before they leave, I give my little spiel. I'm like, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know I'm legally blind. I can't see faces. I also throw in that I don't drive anymore, because some people don't know. A lot of people don't know what that means. I'm legally blind. They're like, yeah, me too. They think they are too, because they wear glasses. And so the normal person doesn't understand. So when I throw out the phrase, oh, but I don't drive anymore, I haven't for almost 18 years. They're like, oh, like she's got bad eyes for a long time. It's like a next level vision.
Like you're blind.
You're blind.
You're blind.
You're blind. And So for me, it's like a quick little 20-second spiel. And then I just tell them to, say hi to me next time they see me. And I just don't want them to think that I'm being mean or stuck up or like,
Right.
because that's just not me at all.
Yeah.
And it's very important to communicate that. So for me, there's no other way than to do that.
Yeah, it's very individual, isn't it? I think at the end of the day, it's what you feel comfortable with and how you
Right.
are as a person. But I think, knowledge is power. We do it a lot and we kind of get sick of it, get sick of explaining. But,
Yeah.
if we want good outcomes and good results, I think you still have to educate a little bit because people are fairly ignorant about it and just think of the worst case scenario. Well, how come you don't have a cane? How come you don't have a guide dog? How come you're not wearing glasses? All this stuff that's just what people see and what people know. It's hard to get over.
Yeah. And I don't mind
Yeah.
answering any of those questions. A lot of people are genuinely like interested. And I
Curious.
know they've not, you're right. And they've never met someone that's legally blind or whatever. So I don't mind being the one to educate them about all that stuff and why I don't use a cane and why I don't have a guide dog. And I do wear glasses for far away, but like close up, I don't wear glasses because they don't help close up. But I love educating people because I might be the only one that they ever meet that is legally blind. And
Right.
then, or until they do meet another one, and then they'll have a little knowledge of like what that entails and that they need someone to come up to them and approach them. And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Don't
for
know.
sure. Yeah.
Tell me around your house. Are there specific things that you have found in your arsenal of toolkits for blind people and low vision? What do you find helps you every day around your house?
My phone. If my phone dies, I am like a lost puppy dog. Yeah, my iPhone, it's like, and now my Meta glasses are attached like to my phone. So I just need my phone to not be dead. And I can ask my glasses. They're so amazing. They can help read my mail to me, which I, in general, let mine stack up. I don't get a whole lot of mail. My husband does. But now I can actually sort through it for him. And my glasses just tell me who's it from. And I can make a stack of his and mine. And then I can say who's it to, and then who's it from. And then if it's junk, I just rip it. Don't even, waste my time on
Yeah.
it. And then it summarizes, in the past, like seeing AI, I used to read like a robot, all of the top, like the address and all the stuff you don't want to know.
Right.
But the glasses literally summarize for you the gist of it in 2 seconds. It takes no time. Oh, this is just a letter letting you know that your child has a field trip coming up. And then I could ask it questions. Oh, what's the date? And then it will tell me the date. What teacher is this for? And it'll tell me the teacher. Like, it's so neat to not have to like listen to.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So those are like a game changer. The Meta glasses, I love those. But yeah, the magnifier on my phone, it's like having a portable CCTV.
Yeah.
As I like went legally blind at a time where the Commission for the Blind gave me the portable CCTVs. They were pretty intense. And then I have two desktops still. I have them. One's a big desktop monster CCTV, and one's a little bit more portable. Anyway, so that's the kind of stuff that I used to have to use to read.
Do you know what a closed circuit television is, TJ?
What is?
A closed circuit television, a
I
CCTV.
do. I do.
That's good.
You know that I'm over 50, right?
Well, I know, but you also like live in the South and you're rural and you haven't necessarily seen all of the things. So I like to see if you're,
You think I'm one of those that are hidden away from all the things. I gotcha.
If you haven't lived until you've lugged this CCTV around, I had the original one with the black and white before color came in. That's
Ooh.
and the tray that always used to like never stay stable and just flip flop all over the place. And I had to carry that thing around to class in high school. And I'm like, there's just no way. I just can't do it. It's ridiculous. And so, it's like technology just, I want to ask you a question about your Meta glasses because I kind of feel like a lot of people that I speak to, technology is good and it definitely helps, but there's a phobia of technology, right? People aren't tech savvy, and so then when they get something like the meta glasses, they won't take the time to learn how to use them, and so then they'll just sit in their glasses case,
Hmm.
forever because they're too intimidated to be able to learn the technology. Tell me about your learning journey on the meta glasses.
It really wasn't too bad. I had my husband, because what I don't like doing is setting things up. I don't like having to zoom in, tap twice with three fingers and zoom in everywhere and
Yeah.
try to find how to set something up. So I had him download the app for me and kind of make my glasses connect. So I let him do that to save me a little bit of the trouble. And then from there, I went on to I usually YouTube everything, and let YouTube tell me how to do things. So I was like, hey, how do I get my phone to be able to link to my contact, or my glasses to link to my contacts on my phone? Because I can make phone calls without using my hands or looking at my phone at all.
Yeah.
Right through my glasses. So, but you have to set it up that way. So I just asked YouTube everything, and YouTube told me how to do everything. But yeah, then you just zoom in by tapping and, click what you got to click. But once it's all set up, it's really just playing with stuff and learning where to tap to take a picture, take a video, to turn them off completely. Sometimes I'll be having a conversation in real life, and I have it set up so it reads my text messages to me automatically. But I'm having a real life conversation and I'm like, oh, sorry, I cannot pay attention because I have a text message being read in my ears right now. So I'll just turn it off. And there's probably a different way to make it stop. I'm just not familiar with that. So I'm still not, 100% with them, knowing all the tricks to it. But then some people are. I remember I did a video about the glasses, and someone's like, oh, to make it stop recording, you just click this button once or twice or something. And I was like, whoa. So it's kind of nice to get feedback. When you put stuff out there, people will answer you.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
awesome. I think that's the other advantage of our community, right? Is now there's so many people who know different things, and the knowledge base is so wide that everybody's had an experience doing something or other, and then help each other, which I love about it.
Yeah, me too.
This community is outstanding. I remember sitting in my retinal specialist appointments for almost 18 years now. Every time I would go, I would see all these people in there, and most of them were a lot older. I was one of the youngest ones always in the room. And I'm just sitting there like, how am I ever going to meet someone with Stargardts? I don't know anybody with Stargardts. And really what I wanted was just somebody my age, or at the same level as me or something, that's a mom or that, I don't know, but it would be really cool to meet somebody with Stargardts. But I'm like, how am I going to meet someone like me?
Mm-hmm.
There's never anybody here, and you can't just ask them in a waiting room, excuse me, what's your diagnosis? Unless you're maybe just spark a conversation and you somehow get it to, come up naturally.
Yeah.
But I'm just I don't know of a conference, and how would I get to the conference? I just never thought there would be ever a day that I would be able to have a conversation with somebody that has Stargardts or something like Stargardts, or just legally blind in general. I don't know legally blind people. So now this platform is here, and this is just amazing. This is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
This is the coolest.
So you weren't aware of things like National Federation of the Blind or American Council of the Blind or state chapters for those organizations or anything like that?
I mean, I knew that stuff existed, but mostly the experience I had with it was that it was just online, where you could post stuff maybe and people might respond to it, or I don't know. It was just kind of information. It wasn't anything. I wasn't aware of any way to talk to people or become friends with people. You know what I'm saying?
Did you know about Beat Baseball? Yeah. Did you ever try Beat Baseball?
Have not.
It's interesting. It's a big game. It's probably goalball and Beat Baseball. It's probably the two biggest sports. And I haven't actually played the full game, but I've definitely played baseball, adaptive baseball, and I think it's really cool. And a lot of people play it. I think it's quite big in New York, actually. I think they've got a number of teams, one upstate and one in the city. So,
nice.
Yeah. I want to see you come play Beat Baseball now.
Beat Baseball.
Yeah.
I'll have to find some time to get there between the other baseball games, but that would be pretty cool.
Off season.
Yeah.
So, what about the future? What do you think the future brings for you? What would you like to do? Have you thought about like going back to massage, or doing something different when the kids grow up? Do you like to travel with your husband? What are kind of some of the things that you want to do?
My husband has talked about we want to be snowbirds because he hates living in New York.
Right.
We both have very big families on both sides of our families. It's a massive amount of people, and they're all fairly local to us right here. So we have lots of family and friends and support systems around here, which is great. And that's why it'd be hard to like move somewhere different, but he's constantly, especially this winter was brutal. He's like, why do we live in New York?
Right.
So we can't wait to like snowbird somewhere south. Once the kids are graduated, that would be awesome. I would love to travel, like, a lot of like in the States, even like I've been to a lot of the East Coast of the United States. Not so much the West Coast. But I'd love to see like the big mountains, and I don't know. I posted this with the blind bucket list. I've made a video, and some people were like, oh, Utah, there's beautiful mountains in Utah. And like, I know the state of Washington, and Virgin River, it's a show on Netflix. The scenery, it's gorgeous. And TJ, I know you mentioned Montana, right? You made a video.
Yes.
Oh
yes,
my gosh,
yes.
gorgeous! Like
yes,
the views. I would love to, visit places like that and just have the time and not be rushed with kids' sports and stuff to get back to. Yeah. I'm excited to do stuff like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I think traveling's so much fun. I've always loved to travel, and where my wife and I are going back to Australia for 3 weeks in July, and I said to Timmy, it's the last time we're going to go back for a few years because I really want to go to Europe, and I really want to go Greece and do the Greek islands and Athens, and then I really want to go to Egypt and ride camels around the pyramids and do a cruise down the Nile. So yes, this will be the last time for Australia. But then this morning I was looking at videos of Sydney Harbour, and I was like, oh, it's so beautiful. I miss it. Yes. Yeah. So you've got a lot of good messages for people. I love your videos. You're not kind of like this 5 seconds and done creator. You like to get into a bit of depth. I love to ask you, just in the podcast format, are there things that you've come across since being in community that you think are really important messages that either you've done videos on and you've gotten really great responses from, or that you want to do videos on and you think are really important? So here's your platform.
Oh my goodness. I wish I had this ahead of time. Oh, I'm so bad at thinking of things in the spot. I mean, I actually already talked about it. I think my main thing is like to not be afraid to tell. A lot of people I've heard of I've seen videos, and people are afraid to tell people that they're blind, and they don't even tell their coworkers that they're legally blind. And I don't know how that even is possible to, I guess I'm an open book, but how it's possible to get the support and like, I don't know, to have that team, to work cohesively with people around you and not be open with them. I would just encourage others to not be afraid, or it's nothing to be ashamed of or to hide. And don't be afraid to ask for help, but really, I have found there's so many people at the kids' sports games when I go to them, because I'm just an open book about my blindness. So many people, it makes me so happy inside when they are like, hey, Janelle, it's so-and-so's mom. And I'm like, hey, how are you? And I can just walk around, and people left and right are calling my name and saying hi to me. And it's not in a weird, like, I don't know how to explain.
But that's the work that's done, right?
It's normal.
Educate
it's just
people to be able to understand. And I think like that's what we talk about. Like when we talk about, when we had Madeline on and we talked about summer camps and going into an environment where you feel comfortable, right? That people know who you are and what's going on. That's what you're talking about here, is you've taken the time to tell people about it. And, last week we had Joey on, which is just an amazing story of driving heavy machinery around for years, pretty
Yeah.
frightening. And, even Mandy, our first guest, and Mandy took so long to be able to tell her workplace or ask for accommodations. But everybody that we speak to who's been in that environment are so happy when they've done it and feel
Yes.
so relieved that they finally did it. So your message, I think, is really important that, don't be shy or afraid to tell people what your situation is, because people want it mostly help, and it creates a better environment for you when people are aware.
Yeah, well, and you can be your true self. Like I feel like if I didn't tell people, I would be, I don't, maybe more nervous, more worried, like, oh, I did this weird and they don't know why and they think I am incompetent or something. I'm not sure, if I just tell people, I'm like, oh, I need this accommodated, or this is a little too small. Can I have better contrast on this? If I
Yeah,
just am vocal and say what I need, it's not a second thought and it's just like normal, it's
yeah,
I don't have to, I can just be myself and say what I need freely, and and I treat people the way I want to be treated, and I'm very positive about my blindness. I don't let it like hold me back. It is what it is. I'm
yeah.
just and so I find that people treat me with the exact same type of energy that I give to them. I receive it. So I don't know. I would just definitely encourage others to not be afraid to, speak up for themselves, say what they need, ask for help, because it makes a world of difference in like how you, I guess, your outlook on all sorts of things in life.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think that's a great message.
Yes. Yes.
Are there anything else that you would like to talk about?
Let me make sure. I wrote a few things. Let me make sure I hit them all.
Imagine that. She wrote some notes.
Right.
I wrote.
You can't
I
put
love it.
yourself on pause and edit it back though here, so it's all live, no pressure.
That's funny. No, I mean, I think, and also, oh, well, I wrote at the very bottom, mom life. So I've seen a few videos about people being nervous to have children, and again, everybody's different, and for me, it wasn't even a second thought. I just knew I always wanted kids, and it never stopped me from, having children, because I was legally blind before I had the children. So, yeah, there's definitely tricky times with having to dress them in like bright colors when you're in big crowded areas, so you can like find them a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And asking you can't drive yourself places, so typically you're with a mom friend or your husband or somebody. So it's a lot of like, hey, do you see my kid? Are they good? Do I need to go like address an issue? Are they being naughty? Are they throwing rocks?
I just like Jessie's videos, honestly. There was a video of her last night that she put on where she's like, my kids wanted me to go to the creek or the river, and I followed them down, and they like it's 70 steps, and then I got to 70 and they're like, oh, it's just a little bit more, Mom.
Yeah. So, and I find that the kids really help me a lot. And I know Jesse's made videos about this as well, but, I'll be walking with them and they'll be like, Mom, wait, there's a car coming. And I'm like, oh, like they're just so sweet because they know what I can't see. They know what I have trouble with. And they, more than anybody, really, my children, they know what I need help with, and they like take care of me. They'll walk me to places and lead me to things, and like, here it is, Mom. All right, see you later.
Right. We're out of here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think, that's really important for kids, and it really helps them, like it gives them a greater appreciation for, the smaller things in life. And from what I've seen, kids who grow up like that become really good adults because they have that perspective. So, yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, they're pretty compassionate, empathetic kiddos. So I think it's a good thing.
TJ, any last messages?
Mm-hmm. No, I want to piggyback on, I guess, what Janelle was saying about being just a vision impaired mom. It's doable, and surround yourself with people that don't mind jumping in. Doing motherhood or parenthood in general without having a vision issue, it takes a village anyway. And I think doing it, having a vision impairment, you just learn to lean on that village maybe a little bit more. But that is what they're there for. And they may lean on you for things that, you didn't expect them to need you for. So it's a two-way street. And don't let that slow you down or stop you from wanting to fulfill that lifelong dream. We can still do everything that other people can do. So
yep, that is an important message. Good stuff. Well, Janelle,
yes.
We really appreciate you coming on with us, and we've been looking forward to having you on. We definitely love and enjoy your weekly recitals of our podcast, and look forward to them a lot. And so thank you for being always a supporter of what we're trying to achieve. And I'm really just excited about the next steps for our community. I think there's going to be some really cool things happen in the next couple of months that will really bring our community even closer together than what TJ and I are doing. And so that's exciting to see the progression of what we're doing.
It is very exciting. And thank you guys for doing this podcast. We talked briefly about me talking longer than a few seconds. When I do my videos, I make kind of long videos, but I appreciate hearing stories. And so that's why I love the podcast so much, is because I like to hear stories, and, little 10-minute clips is not enough for me.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think just opening up the shell on people who you do see, bits of content from, and then telling their story, it really opens it up to the community. And we've gotten such a good, response from doing that. So it's great for us. We love it. And it's great that the community is enjoying it as well.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you very much. We'll be back on episode 12.
Bye, guys.